Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Between Friends. Thank you so much for joining me. I see many of you are piping in where you're watching from. We have Marjorie Hirschberger piping in from Lancaster, PA. She says it's been a while since she's been here, so we love having you back. And we have a friend, Sigrid Belglin from Germany. Isn't that lovely? And on the other side of the planet, Harriet Ann Palmer from Homestead, Florida. I hear there's a little bit of snow up in Minnesota, one of our viewers said. So let us know if you're enjoying beautiful weather, like Susan DeSoto in Virginia says it's a sunny day in Arlington. I love that. Well, you are in for a really fun show today. We have a lot of tips to share, but I'm not going to do it by myself. I've invited a guest to come in, an industry leader that if you don't know her, you are really going to enjoy getting to know her. So without further ado, let me welcome Margaret Moorehead, the founder of the Virtual Sewing Guild. Hello, Margaret.
Hi, Eileen. It's so good to see you. I'm so excited to be on today's show.
Oh, well, thanks for joining me, taking the time out of your busy schedule to visit with Between Friends. So thank you. And we're going to share quilting tips, right?
Yes, absolutely. We've got the best tips.
Yes. But before we do that, I want to ask you 20 questions. It might be more than 20, but
oh my.
We've done this with others, and I know our viewers really love it. So first off, let's start with, what is the Virtual Sewing Guild?
Oh my gosh, it is a dream come true for me. I started Virtual Sewing Guild back in 2007. It wasn't named that, but it was basically Virtual Sewing Guild. And it allowed me then to do what lots and lots of people are doing now. I get to come into your home and I get to show you wonderful projects, techniques, ideas, inspiration. So it's just it's a wonderful avenue for you to learn great sewing information.
And what year did you start that?
2007. So that's like a lot of years ago.
A lot of years ago. And, you know, we're all, when COVID, that brought an awful lot of us to this virtual segment. But, 2007 was way before that catastrophe, right? So you are a pro. I imagine that your attendees at the Virtual Sewing Guild receive great treatment. And is it a membership? It's free to everybody, right? And then talk about that.
I try to do something for everyone. So we start with, you can create a free membership at any time, and there's an area that you go into. So it's all very secure. So you can create your free membership. I have a monthly webinar, a monthly subscription, and then what you see on the screen is my favorite. It's my premium membership. And honest to goodness, it's what I wanted when I was learning all this stuff. I wanted to have a place that had good information that would allow me to soar with my creativity. So it's got projects in it. It's got step-by-step videos in it. There's hundreds of people who join me for the premium membership. You get all your embroidery designs with it. A Facebook community, written instructions, everything. And this year we're doing something called Back to Basics. So in addition to all that other stuff, we're going to meet once a month and we are going to go back to the basics. So you know what tools to use, what techniques to use, and you're going to get that foundation. If you had it before, you're going to learn some new stuff. If you haven't had it, it is a great place to start.
Oh, that's excellent. Well, speaking of starting, can you kind of describe your aha moment when you realized I need to start this? What was that?
Well, you know what? It wasn't even really my aha moment. I used to travel around teaching, with FOF teaching, and everybody kept saying, Margaret, you need to do this online because you can reach more of us. I want to take more classes from you, but you're only this was actually in Occoquan, Virginia, where I launched it. They said, we can only take it from you when you're here. You need to go online. Eileen, I hadn't even been on a conference call in my entire life when I started my online business. Judith up in Occoquan, Virginia said, come up, I'll film you. We'll edit it. We'll put it online. We did not have a clue what we were doing, but we put out the best information, and it just forward from there.
Right. And folks, if you know anything about video editing, let me tell you, in 2007, that was very complicated. Of course, today you can kind of do things on your phone,
Right.
it was simple software, but wow, that's very impressive. So, what was your biggest fear before starting your company? What was your biggest fear?
Okay, well, again, I didn't know it was a fear till the night before my big webinar. I had 500 people signed up. It was one of the first free webinars I did. I had 500 people signed up. So the night before, the guest speaker was going to be Simon Haskins. The night before, so I had done all my webinars at the library because my internet was satellite, so it was too slow. So I'd always go to the library. I had that down pat. The night before my webinar, Simon and I were doing a rehearsal, and we were doing our rehearsal from 8 to 9 because that's the time that our webinar was going to be. And guess what? The library internet shuts down at 8:30.
Oh, oh,
So I had to rent a hotel room the next night to do my webinar.
wow. And without that practice, you would not have known that.
Absolutely. It's a good thing that I'm kind of nuts about making
Yeah.
sure I have everything planned out.
Right. Wow, that's a lesson, really. That is great. Okay. So if you could destroy one myth about your fabulous job or business, what would that be?
Um, Sometimes we make it look easier than it is.
Mhm.
There's a lot of time invested in it. So I think that's it.
Mm.
It's wonderful and it's great, but it's time consuming. And the thing I hate the most is the office work. So
Yeah, right. And maybe one thing that would be that you don't get to sew as much as you thought you would,
yeah.
right?
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh.
I
Yeah.
know. Mhm. Okay, so let's see. How about if you could visit any country in the world, where would you go?
I think I would go back to Sweden.
You
And
would.
I would, and the reason is, I'm not a real adventurous person, but when I was in Sweden, um, you'd be sitting at a table in a restaurant or something, and people would come up to me and they say, "You're American, you speak English, right?" And I say, "Yeah." And they said, "Could we just sit here and chat with you? We want to practice our English." And it was so heartwarming to me, and I learned so much about the people there.
Oh, that's lovely. That is really lovely. I had that experience in China. People around the world do want to practice their English. So I think many Americans are afraid of going to foreign places thinking maybe they won't be able to communicate. But in many instances, we're embraced, right? Because, it is an opportunity to practice. So,
Right,
yeah, pretty
absolutely.
cool. Hmm. Okay, so let's see. What's your favorite color?
Oh, pink, pink.
That's what I thought you would say. That's what I thought you would say. And how about, are you currently binging anything on like Netflix or Prime?
Okay. Y'all, you know what? I just watched Harlan Coben's Fool Me Once, and it was 8 episodes, and I never watch more than like an hour of TV if I watch TV at all, but I watched 8 episodes in 2 nights. I loved it.
Oh, okay. Good to know. We'll have to put that on our watch list.
Yes.
So, and comedians, are you a Betty White or a Joan Rivers?
Oh, Betty White.
That's
I
what I
love
mean.
these questions.
Aren't they fun?
They
Now,
are.
what was the last class you took as a student, not taught, but what was the last class that you took?
Cookie decorating class.
Oh, that's great. I love to cookie decorate too. It's kinda it's similar to sewing, I guess, right?
It is, but, the thing is, you don't have to find a place for it in your house, and you get to eat it, so
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And are you good at it?
I'm going to start. I have taught classes since
Oh,
then, yeah.
you have?
So,
Oh, wonderful.
yeah,
Good.
so I love it.
Okay. Well, that sounds like a future show that we could do something fun with that. Okay. So, dark or milk chocolate? What's your preference?
That's a tough one because I always think that it's milk chocolate, but a good dark chocolate, I love it because I can eat less of it than
Mhm.
milk chocolate because the flavor is so robust.
Yes,
So,
right.
I don't know. It can go either way on that one.
Okay. Let's see. How many embroidery machines are currently up and running in your studio? I mean, not running at this moment, but you could jump on at any time.
6.
6. Okay. And how many pairs of scissors are in your studio?
A lot, because as soon as I pick one up, I set it down somewhere and lose it. But I have a drawer about this wide and pretty long, and that's filled with all my shears. And then the next drawer down is miscellaneous, and then the next drawer down is all the little snips.
Wow. So would you say you have more scissors than shoes?
Oh, by far, yes.
By far. Okay. Do you have a favorite fabric designer?
I don't think that I do. I
Mhm.
don't. I love different fabrics, but I am not good at knowing the designer names.
Okay.
So,
Okay. That fair enough. How about your go-to hoop size?
in FOF world, it is the 150 by 240. So like,
Okay. Nice.
6 by 10 or something.
Yeah,
Because
6 by
most of
10.
the designs I do are the bigger designs,
They are.
So,
Mhm.
yeah, so I want a good size hoop on that.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Do you have cats or dogs?
A dog, Tinkerbell, she's 8 pounds, and she was on
Oh,
my webinar this morning with me.
oh, how sweet. Do you have a superhuman ability?
Procrastination.
That's fun. Okay, so 24 is a new year, a new you. What's in store for 24 for you?
For me, on a personal level, I really want to read more. I have not
Mhm.
invested time in reading books probably in the past 2 to 3 years, and I really miss it. So that's my personal goal, is
Okay.
to get back into reading on a daily basis.
And do you read fiction or nonfiction?
I tend to read business books, and I think that's maybe why I haven't read in a little while, because I think I got burned out on them. So my plan is to read some autobiographies or
Mhm.
biographies, and
Mhm.
business books, and also fiction. So I
Fiction.
want a well-rounded
Very
book.
good. Very good. Okay. Um, I guess that's probably it for our 20 questions. So I guess we can pop over and start to work. Should we do that?
Okay. That was fun. Thank you.
It is fun. But if any of our viewers have any questions for Margaret that you'd like to ask, please pipe it into the comments and we will ask those. We'll ask Margaret. So 20 tips, right? Of course, we're going to talk about machine embroidery, quilting with your embroidery machine. And now, Margaret, you have a long arm, so you have some expertise in that area. But today's class, Between Friends, that's me. That's embroidery, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so we're just going to read through the top 10 and then we're going to go through them so that you really understand. Number 1, allow sufficient time. If it's a full size or larger quilt, it's a big project. You got to gather and select the materials. You're going to audition the quilting designs, prepare the quilt sandwich, and we're going to talk about marking the quilt. And right here, we're going to talk about vertical placement, but it can also be horizontal. Winding bobbins, where to start, and advancing the quilt, one hooping to the next hooping, and how many hoopings are in a bobbin. And that's pretty important because that'll keep you on track. And then finally, using scraps to make the label that you used in the quilt. So let's see. We do have one question. It says, could you address how big a quilt in both domestic machines and multi-needle? Well, I've done king size quilts on a single needle machine, and I imagine you could do the same on a multi-needle because the head size is about the same. So we're going to kind of go through a lot of that, right? All right, so let's head over to allowing sufficient time. Margaret, we piece the quilt, maybe we embroider it, we applique it, and then the quilting, if you read a lot of pattern instructions, it will tell you, yardage and how to piece and, cut the units and then piece the units and subcut and ba. But then it says quilt as desired, 3 words. And it's a big project.
Oh, it is, and it's so hard to figure out, well, how do I quilt it? What do I do? Quilt is desired. I don't know how to quilt. What am I going to do now?
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah. So leave yourself. So if this is going to be a wedding gift, make sure you're allowing sufficient time between when the piecing will be done and when you're going to wrap up the project, literally in a box and give it away. Because you don't want to stress over this. It can be really fun. So just pad that into your schedule. Okay,
Well,
next thing. Yeah.
I just want to jump in because that's exactly what I was going to say. We do this because we enjoy it. So if you have to rush through it and be stressed, you're not going to enjoy it. So in my favorite saying is enjoy the process, and you will enjoy it when you do allow time for it.
Exactly. Exactly. So, and then gather the materials. Of course, when I say materials, your quilt top's already pieced, right? You already have that, but you're going to need batting, backing fabric, thread, and some tools. So we're going to go over and we're going to shop the wall, and then we're going to look at some threads on the table on quilts, so we can talk a little bit about thread selection. And I imagine you have some good opinions on that, right, Margaret?
I do. I do.
Good. Okay. So first off, we're going to shop the wall. So most likely I'm going to use print and stick Target template paper. That's going to help me select and view my quilting design right on my quilt top. We'll take a look at that. We'll do that together. I'm also going to use a snap hoop monster. To me, there's no other way to quilt with an embroidery machine unless you have a snap hoop monster, because that's going to allow you to advance that quilt without removing the quilt from the machine. You're just going to lift that top frame, slide that fabric, put the frame back in place and go. And when you do that, you want to make sure you're going in a straight line. And that's where snap guides come out. So we're going to talk about that tool. It's a tool that was designed specifically for snap hoop monster. It's very helpful. We talked about big quilts, right? Well, a big quilt is bulky. It has a lot of weight. And the way to quilt successfully is to handle that bulk and keep that bulk above the machine bed. And our weightless quilter and our tabletop weightless quilter is going to do that for you. So here, I've just mounted this weightless quilter tabletop on our totally tubular hooping station. So you can see what the clamp looks like. That goes on my table right next to my machine. And then this gooseneck opens up and gets nice and tall. And then, of course, this fabric clamp is what will hold my quilt in place. And you're going to see all this in action in a little bit. And then, of course, for bigger quilts, we have the weightless quilter, which is a floor frame. But in 2 weeks, we're going to do a queen size quilt right here on Between Friends. And you're going to see that in the weightless quilter. So we'll get into that really deep then. But for now, there's lots more to do. Okay, so I think I covered, thread, right? We need thread. So let's go to the overhead cam and take a look at some quilts. So this is a pretty geometric, and, maybe I would have selected this kind of creamy polyester thread to blend with this beige fabric or this creamy fabric that's the majority of the quilt top itself. But, goodness, that orange is so pretty, right? That's tempting. So is the pink. But I opted for a variegated thread that has all of those in there. And it actually turned out really well. Wouldn't you agree? But I want you to also notice that these are solid fabrics. So this is really allowing you to see the thread. You can see pretty much all of the circles, the swirls, because it's a solid fabric. We're going to look at a print in a moment. Let me move this out of the way. And let's take a look at this beautiful two-tone blue. Now, many quilters traditionally will use a thread color that is almost the same color as your fabric. And when you do that, you only then get texture. You don't actually see the pattern of the beautiful designs that you stitched. So in this sample, we chose a dark blue to stitch on the light blue fabric and a white to stitch on the border so that you could see all of that gorgeous stitching. That's a personal preference. Everybody's different, but it's pretty and it really works. Now I'm going to show you a quilt that, maybe you're doing this for who knows, a doggy lover. This fabric is so busy, it almost doesn't matter what color you choose. You really are never going to see all of it. Like you may not even be able to see this, but I have a design already stitched here in this segment, and it's in light gray thread. If I had done it in black thread, you would have seen it, but I think that would have not been very attractive on these delicate flowers and the background and so forth. So know that even though we take a lot of time to select an embroidery design, often some fabrics just kind of, you can't really do that. So, it doesn't matter what color thread. So I think we have some good examples to show you. So let's go ahead over in the PowerPoint, and I'll show you another example of a very busy fabric. And this is a Kay Fawcett fabrics, beautiful fabrics, right? I love these. They're so busy, but you can't really see the quilting lines. You see texture, but you don't see the lines, right, Margaret?
Absolutely. It's gorgeous, though.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe if I had done like a deep red thread, but then it kind of is really contrasting with those gorgeous fabrics. The fabrics are the star of this quilt. So I just wanted to add texture. So I just chose I think it's a soft yellow thread on that. Okay, then let's take a look at this next slide. So here's a fun Halloweenish kind of print, and we stitched some hoops on it. And you could see it right there in the purple, right? But when if we were to zoom out, again, you're just seeing texture. It's really hard to see quilting designs on busy prints. So that's a kind of a good thing in some ways, right, Margaret? Because it's forgiving.
Yes. And it just enhances the other parts of the quilt.
Exactly. It sure does. Yeah. Okay. And here's, a popular technique, which is the jelly roll quilts. Well, goodness, you sure don't see that, right? That's a little happy flower. You can see the flowers there in the pink flower, but it's the same repeat over in those greens and blues and chartreuse and up at the top of the screen, but you really don't see them. They just blend. So, okay, let's take a look at some solids. Oh, aren't these pretty? Now, again, we selected all tone on tone here, so it's just texture, but we could have really jumped up the contrast by selecting threads that were highly contrasting with the base. But, a baby quilt, probably just want to add something soft and some texture, right?
Right.
Yeah, so fun. Okay, and then one, I think we have a couple more. So this is a traditional pieced quilt that used solid fabrics with a lot of white negative space. So that's the color thread that I chose, because really here again, we want the stars and those, diamonds in a square to be the hero of the quilt. If I had stitched all that quilting in a dark blue thread that would contrast with all of those elements, that then becomes the focal point of the quilt instead of the beautiful piecework and the blocks. So you have to kind of know the look you want to go for, right?
Yeah. So Eileen, what I wanted to say on this is I think it's so amazing when you look at an unquilted quilt and then you see it quilted, because I think the word blend that you use is perfect, because it makes all those individual blocks come together as a whole, because there's the consistency of the quilting through the whole thing. So like you said, quilting can be the star of the show, or it can be the what do they call those in the Academy Awards, the supporting actress or actor.
Supporting actor, absolutely, absolutely. And then here's a close-up again of, and this is a good example of how contrasting thread, really shows on a pieced quilt, because look at those beige areas. You're really seeing that thread. And maybe that's the look you're going for, or maybe that's going to turn you off. So, audition the thread on your quilt top by just like unspooling it and laying it across the different pieced fabrics and seeing how it's going to appear on the lights, the darks, the medium tones. And you'll just know instinctively. And often I use my phone, take a photograph, and then move that thread to another area, take another photograph, and then maybe audition another thread. Okay, so Kathy Barker wants to know, do you sew out a sample when you're doing your quilts as for threads or designs? Well, that's a good question, Kathy. So like currently right now, I'm working on a queen size quilt, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of patchwork. There's 180 blocks, but we're getting there. And I will not stitch a sample on that quilt. I will probably stitch a sample of the quilting design that I finally select on another piece of fabric, just on muslin or something. I want to see the texture. I want to see, I mean, a lot of this I can do in software, but sometimes it is nice to stitch it out. And specifically, if you want to see how much loft is in the batting that you've selected. Traditionally, I use a wool batting because it's very lightweight. It's a natural fiber and it breathes and it's lofty, but it's lightweight, which is good for me as an embroiderer and a quilter. But for the user, they often like a heavier quilt. So that would tell me they want cotton. So I would stitch out a muslin with that same batting and that quilting design just to see the texture that, you know, is it going to be what I want? Is it going to be enough texture? Or is it just going to be flat? So how about you? Do you make stitch samples?
You know what I do is I like in that quilt, there's 3 colors. So I would stitch 3 strips together, the pink, the orange, and the creamy color. And then I stitch over that so I can see what my thread is going to look like on each thing. And, you know, if you're quilting it in the hoop, like we do on so many of our projects, then I just make it just long strips, just out of the scraps, quilt up, like you said, the sample, put it in the hoop, quilt it up. But that way I can see it each on the different colors. So I like to do that.
Yeah, and that's really wise. And probably I should do that. I mean, it's a queen size quilt and I've been working on this for quite a while. So, you know, get it right, right? Yeah. Okay. And then lastly, well, I just have that image of that, those beautiful, beautiful blues. But again, here clearly you can see contrasting thread. You're going to see the quilting. Right. You're going to see the quilting. Okay, so Kathy Barker is a beginner. She says, what would you suggest for a beginner to start with? Something easy. Well, I would say a pillow or a table runner, right?
Yeah, those are good size. So you can get them done. You can experience how it all comes together. Those are great suggestions.
Right. So a pillow could possibly be 2 hoopings. Let's say you have a 6x10 hoop. So you could do a 10-inch pillow. So you would have 2 hoopings for that. Table runner, you're going to get several hoopings. And, you know, it's the re-hooping that teaches you how to quilt with your embroidery machine. If you're just quilting in the hoop, as we say, where you just do 1 block, 1 hooping, you're not learning that much. But when you're advancing and connecting and so forth, that's when you really master those skills. And we often are afraid of trying that. And really, you shouldn't be. You really shouldn't be. And you know what? You can practice on felt. It doesn't even have to be a quilt sandwich, right?
Yeah. Well, and you're never going to get any better until you do it.
That's right.
And I'm always surprised when I procrastinate it, my favorite thing to do. And I eventually get to it. It's like, oh my gosh, why didn't I do this sooner? And I think you're going to find this quilting in the hoop and the multiple hoopings. Oh my gosh, we have advanced so far from where we were that this is really, it is an easy technique. It just takes a little bit of practice.
Yeah. And, you know, it's rewarding. It is so rewarding, isn't it? I mean, when you make that quilt sandwich, it's kind of a hot mess, right? The batting, the backing is larger than the quilt top. And sometimes you're at a stage in that project where you're just like, oh, kind of tired of looking at those fabrics, right? But to me, when I put that first quilting design on it, oh, I get so excited and jazzed to go and add that texture to the entire quilt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then when it's done, like you did it all. I love it.
Oh, it is. And it's so rewarding. I don't like when I start a project and then somebody else has to finish it for me. So the quilting in the hoop is just the best answer. You've got these beautiful embroidery machines. Use them to their fullest. Put them to good use.
Absolutely. And Patricia Hale says, your project always looks so much better when you take it out of the hoop and it's done. Absolutely. Yes. It really does. That's what I mean by rewarding. Okay, so let's see. What's next? Well, next is auditioning the quilting designs. Now, I could go into software and show you how I do that, and but I think we'll save that for another day because we do have 10 pretty deep tips here. But I do a lot of virtual quilting, as I imagine you do too, Margaret.
Yep.
And it allows you to, select different designs and so forth. But another way to do it is to select that design and resize it and then take a look at it on the quilt. So I'm going to go ahead and clear my space here and bring out another quilt. And we have this. And this is, I want to tell you that I pieced every one of these tiny little strips together, but I didn't. It is a panel. It's just fabric. But so we have this circle design, this kind of bubbles. Now, this is a very geometric quilt. So it has lots of straight lines, right angles, little triangles. So to me, I'm going to quilt this edge to edge, and I'm going to do a swirly design, something that does not have straight lines, right angles, or triangles, because those two designs, the quilting design and the fabric design, would compete with each other. And wherever I put that quilting design, it would look like it was misaligned. So if I use something swirly and circular, it's just going to add that texture, and it's going to be a beautiful continuous line of bubbles, which I think are just perfect for this quilt. It's kind of a watery color palette. So here, and I'm going to put these down. I'll do them horizontal so that it's a little easier to see. So here's a small one, a medium size, and then one that's even larger. It's much bigger. And I've pieced together my templates to do that. So what am I looking at in size? Well, what I have here are these three different sizes. My bubbles start to, this is the original size. Now they get a little bit bigger and even bigger still. So this means less texture, right? And really, this is probably about 2.5 inches. That's a lot of open space, This one here is probably just 1.5 inches, and what I could get out of ruler and so forth. But as you repeat these over the quilt top, the quilt sandwich, you'll realize, that might be too much open negative space, not enough quilting, right? So I kind of like this mid-size. That's going to add just enough. And look at the size of those bubbles as compared to the little blocks, right? They're pretty close in size, as where these large ones are bigger than that square. So it may not be as attractive. This scale seems to be in tune with the quilt. Now, I'm not going to worry about landing that in the center of each circle because this is a continuous line design. This is something that I digitized, and I'm just going to repeat over and over across the quilt and down the quilt. So that's one way. And of course, this is our print and stick target template paper, and it's adhesive. So it's actually sticking on there, as you can see. Well, here, I'll put it on my hand so you can see. It just stays in place, and it has enough tack on it that I can reuse this template for a queen size quilt, and it'll be tacky enough. And some of our customers tell us that they then spray the wrong side with temporary spray adhesive so that they can continue to use it for as long as they'd like. Now, when you store it on the shiny side of the protective paper that it comes on. You can see this side is matte. There's no sheen. And then notice the sheen on this side. So that's where it gets stored. And if you put it on the other side, it's almost impossible to separate later on. So a good rule of thumb is to take that paper, and before you even separate it, right, is just put like an X back there so because you get busy, right? You're doing a whole quilt. You may not remember to place it on the shiny side, but if you see that mark, you'll know that's not where you want to put it. So, okay. Yeah, and so let's see, I'm serious. She loves to be able to see the quilt in actual size. It really does help. And then that template, now we didn't print a crosshair on it this time, but normally it would have a crosshair on it. One of them does, I think. Yeah, let's take a look at that. I'll just bring it over. So as you can see, there's a crosshair on that, and I use that under the needle. So that's going to help me align as I advance the quilt. All right. Let's see. Oh yeah, now we are going to talk about, or do you have any comments on that? How do you like to debut your designs?
Well, I really like to put the sticky paper on top of it because doing it on the screen is fine. But when I see it on there, just like you explained, everything, I can really see what it's going to look like when it's finished, the size, the proportion, and all of that. And when you're doing a quilt, you don't want, well, it depends what you want. Like a lot of art quilts are heavily stitched, but the ones you want to cuddle up in are the ones that have spread out designs that allow the quilt to bend and hug you when you're under it.
Very nice. Well, you know, Patricia Hale says the larger designs do make the quilt fluffier. So that's a personal preference, right? And yeah, more quilting means that you're giving up some drape in the final quilt, right? It's not going to just lay across your body, and like you said, Margaret, allow you to wrap it around you. So you know, it's a personal preference. Everybody's different. Everybody's different. So let's see.
And each quilt will be different also. You know, you're gonna have some that you want a lot of quilting on and some that you want a medium and some that you don't want a lot on.
Right. Laura Park says, how many spools of thread does it take to quilt a full-size quilt? Well, it depends on the quilting design, because those 3 designs, so the smaller design that I showed you would take much more thread because we're going to repeat the hoopings. There'll be more hoopings. And of course, it uses more stitches because it's tighter, right? Even though it's in a smaller space. Anyway, so, okay, so let's see. Next up is preparing the quilt sandwich and marking vertical lines. So let me clear my space, and I'm going to show you how I do it, a mini sample of it, because normally I do this at home on my dining room table, or sometimes I'll do it in the office. But I use pool noodles, and I think many of you have probably seen me do that before. So here is my backing fabric, and I'm just going to unroll this so you can see what I did. So I took my backing fabric and I pinned it wrong side up. So wrong side up on the pool noodle, and then I make sure that when I place it on the pool noodle, I'm doing it in a straight line, right? And I pin it, just use straight pins, you know, it's a pool noodle, so they just push right in. And then I'm just going to roll that. And, you know, it just takes a minute. And now, if this was a big quilt, I would be doing this as I go. And, you know, I've done this on queen size quilts easily. And I tape my pool noodles together. So to get that length, I get another pool noodle and I just use packing tape and tape that together, and no problem. Now I'm going to set that aside. And now I've done the same for my quilt top. And now this quilt top is placed on the pool noodle with the right side up in this, in this fashion, right? So now I'm going to take that pool noodle that is the backing, and I place it with the pool noodle away from me on my work surface. And then I take my batting and I place the batting in the center of the fabric. And now the fabric, my batting, you know, if this was real life, my backing and my batting would be just about the same size. The batting might be a little skinnier just so I can see it. That's what's important, right? And then I take my top fabric and I want to make sure that it's centered, that all edges are aligned, and then I start rolling. Now, I'll bet my quilt top would be a little bit narrower, right? So it would probably really appear like this. This is a scrap that I just kind of grabbed. So it would be a little bit narrower because my backing and my batting would be larger than my top. And then I just pin. I use safety pins. I like the mid-size and I like the curved safety pins. And I just put them about a hand's width apart. And I just do that whole section. We'll just put in a couple pins and then we'll advance it. So I'll just close these up and then advance. And yes, I would have another one here and one in the center. But, you know, if this was a queen size quilt, right, we're going to have a whole lot of fabric here. So then we pull the batting back and let the backing pool noodle extend to the other end of the table, place the batting back in place, and then do the same for the top. Add more pins and just continue in that fashion. And it goes like that. You don't have to get on the floor. You don't have to crawl around. It's really awesome.
Well, you know what, Eileen, that is awesome because I was one that was always crawling around on the floor, taping the backing down, laying the batting. So that's a fabulous idea. I've never done that, but I can't wait to try it.
Oh, you should really try it. It is an absolute lifesaver. I mean, without it, I would be sending my quilts out. I just couldn't deal with that. Crawling around on the floor. Yeah. And you only need a table that is the width of your quilt. If you don't have to worry about the length, like my dining room table is, you know, what, 4 feet width. Right. And then, of course, the length is, you know, I have leaves. I don't know, it goes to like 120 or 100, whatever it does, you know, and it's just wonderful. We don't eat in there anymore. I just use it to do that, to quilt, but it's absolutely awesome. So let's see, Dawn Chase, you love the pool noodle technique. It is great. It's such a lifesaver. And you can do it for any size quilt at all. So let's see, our Facebook user wants to know, do you tend to use the same thread on the top and the bottom for all over quilting? Well, that's personal preference. What do you say, Margaret?
I use the same on the top and the bottom because if your machine has a hiccup and it gets off a little bit for something, it's not nearly as noticeable. And I like to be able to see the quilting on the back. So I really like a contrast thread on the back also, you know, but I do match them.
Mm-hmm. I like to use fabric on the back that's the same value as the top quilt, right? The right side of the quilt. And then whatever thread I select, I'm going to get the same look back, front and back of the quilt. So that's, but yes, I do use the same thread, and I use 40 weight polyester exquisite thread to do all my quilting. That's what I use. And I'm happy with it. I love it. You know, and I've been piecing this quilt, right? This queen size quilt. And of course, I'm using traditional cotton, mercerized cotton, and you know, it lints all over. I'm so spoiled with polyester thread that doesn't lint anywhere. Yeah. So I'm forever cleaning out my bobbin case. Oh, I get cranky. Okay, so let's see. What do we have next? Let's see. Oh, yeah, we want to mark vertical lines. Oh, goodness, I'm all over the place. So let me pop back. So now that we have our quilt top, and here, so the last thing we do, of course, is get rid of the pool noodles, right? So we take the backing and, of course, the top off of the pool noodles. And then it's time to mark your quilt. Now, I'm working in a small piece of fabric, but just imagine that this was really large. Now, notice that the seams here, there's not a lot of vertical seams that I'm going to be able to use as a guide when I am rehooping and advancing my quilt. So what I'll do is I'll use painter's tape, and you know, it comes in different widths. You don't need a very wide width, whatever skinny width you can get. And then I just mark my quilt, one long piece of tape in the center of the quilt, vertical center. Well, you know, center, right? So that, because I'm going to start in the center of the quilt, you're going to see that in a minute. But this guide is going to help me advance my my hoop from the center down to the bottom, and then I'll go back to center and go up to the top. And once I have that, I can then remove it for my next column of quilting designs. So it seems complicated. And it is, I mean, it just takes a moment. You have to think that through. You have to have a plan and think it through. So other ways you can mark your fabric is with a removable marker. You should test that first. So I'm not going to tell you what brands or give you any recommendations, because everybody has a sad story about a mark that didn't come out of a quilt. So I like painter's tape because I can just pull it off, no harm, right?
Yeah, that's a great idea. I hadn't thought of that either. So it's a great idea.
Yeah. Okay. So And before we get to how to actually quilt, let's talk about bobbins. So with bobbins, I'm going to recommend that you wind 3 bobbins of the same thread. And the reason for that is, you can always have, you'll have one in the machine, one about ready, that you'll use in a heartbeat. And then the third one's already ready. You don't really need more of that because you can continuously make bobbins throughout the process. But let's see. Okay, so wind those bobbins. Now we're ready to hoop, right? So let's go ahead and take a look at where we start. And I want you to look at your quilt. Now forget about all your piecing, right? All that beautiful piecing. It might be in columns, might be in rows, might be in who knows what. Now think of your quilt as 4 quadrants. And, with a vertical center and a horizontal center, and number them in that sense. If you're on an embroidery machine, you're going to quilt sections 1 and 2 first. They're going to be the half of the quilt that you quilt. And when you get to 3 and 4, you're literally flipping your quilt, because think of the head of your machine, right? You don't want that entire king size, queen size quilt between your needle and the head of the machine. So you're just going to work in half of the quilt, right? You have to kind of envision that. I know people get a little lost, but, just take a moment. We're going to start in the center. And these white circles are designating my weightless quilter. Now, I showed you the tabletop version, and we have a floor version. And it really is imperative that you are maintaining that weight of the quilt. You have to keep it above the machine bed. Maybe you have a giant table. Good for you. That would work. Most of us don't have giant tables that allow a quilt to completely lay out while you are quilting. But what that gray section in the middle of my quilt is designating is the area that is actually held in the weightless quilter. The weightless quilter is probably not going to hold all 4 corners or all 3 corners of the quilt, right, at one time. There's no reason for that. We're just going to focus on the center third. That's the area kind of where we're quilting. And as long as we have that area secured above the bed, you'll have success. You're going to allow the pantograph to move and the quilt will sway with the pantograph. It's all very cool, right, Margaret?
Oh, yeah. And if people are thinking maybe they only need this for big quilts, no, you need this for anything that is going to be hanging out around the machine. So the tabletop version is fabulous.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. Yeah. I just want to give a shout out to Shelley Hayes here. She said she uses a wooden dowel inside the pool noodle, and that helps to keep the 2 pool noodles connected. And that is a great tip, Shelley. I use my weightless quilter poles, and I put them inside my pool noodles. And that's how I store both the pool noodles and the weightless quilter poles, because pool noodles, they want to bend over time. So I just have them all in a basket in the corner and it works out great. Okay. So our next hooping, if you're doing edge to edge, like Emily Scott designs, Christine Connor's technique, she starts in the center and then she goes south and then north in the same column. And then she has a coordinating design, which is design B, and she does the same thing on the next column to the right. And so she'll quilt that whole right side of the quilt. Now, if you are purchasing your quilting design from a quilting website that sells it for long arm quilters, their embroidery designs are going to connect horizontally, because think about a long arm, right? Their sewing field is a very wide horizontal sewing field, unlike our embroidery hoops that are small verticals. So you can still quilt with your embroidery machine using a long arm design. You buy the right size, and then you will move the hoop and advance from center to right edge, and then come back down and under that first center hooping and out to right edge. And you'll do that all the way to the bottom of the quilt, and then you'll repeat that at the top of the quilt. And then you'll flip it all around and repeat for the second half and rotate your design, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. That's cool. Now, let's talk about actually advancing the quilt, the hand. Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're not really advancing the hoop. The hoop stays there, right? It's the quilt that we're moving. And you want to do that in a straight line. So that's why we put the tape there. It gives you something to align to. And then recently, this past year, we invented a new tool called Snap Guide. So let's go ahead and take a look at Snap Guide and how that works.
Snap Guide is an alignment tool for Snap Hoop Monster. It allows you to align designs right under the needle. The metal tabs connect with Snap Hoop Monster's magnetic frame and stay in place while you advance and adjust the fabric. We love it for quilting, and it's quite useful in large hoops when the embroidery should align with a seam or stripe.
So, boy, they're just, I like, phew, right? I should have done that 10 years ago.
Yeah, that's a fabulous little tool. I mean, we struggle so much. So when you think of these great things, we really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. But really, because all of your advancing is happening under the needle. And we need a line inside the hoop, right? To align with a mark on the quilt. It might be a seam that already existed, or it might be your painter's tape that you put down, or your drawn line. So let's go ahead and we'll go to the overhead and you can take a close look at Snap Guide. Now, when you purchase Snap Guide, you do get two. You get a horizontal, you get a short one for the horizontal and a long one for the vertical. And you also get these adhesive centering guides. And you'll notice that they are now symbols, right? So they have, a heart, a star, a diamond, a circle, and they are spaced between solid and dashed lines. And that's because when we're quilting with our embroidery machine, we're not measuring. We are just making sure that as we advance our fabric, we are staying straight in the hoop. So I want to make sure that I have my diamond opening is centered on dashed line here and a dashed line over here. And when it is, I know that I have a straight line in the hoop. Now, maybe you want to use, depending on what you are trying to align, you might need to add the horizontal. Now, I will tell you that sometimes the horizontal ruler, or Snap Guide, can get caught up on the attachment, as you can see here. So this is lifted a little bit. I'm going to lift this so you can see. It doesn't lay flush because of the attachment. So what I like to do is I literally just remove that tab when I need that horizontal. And as long as these lines are square to each other, I know that I have a nice straight line. This is only in the hoop for, 30 seconds because you're advancing the fabric and, you're just aligning quickly. So that's the beauty of these Snap Guides. And they store so nicely. They go together really well. Now, to buy them, you have to know what size hoop you have. So let's go ahead and take a look at PowerPoint so you can get a good look at, oh, wrong mouse. Okay. Oh, and they're on sale. That's the product that's brought to you, bringing you today's episode. So they're only $29.99. So I hope you'll take advantage of it. You have to buy it for your Snap Hoop Monster, which I don't have those slides right here. We'll come back to that. So we'll come back to that. Number 9, how many hoopings in one bobbin? Well, the number of hoopings in a bobbin. Why is that important? Why do you think that's important, Margaret?
Because there's nothing as frustrating as running out of thread in your bobbin when you're in the middle of your embroidery design.
Absolutely. So true. So if you're doing edge-to-edge quilting, you are doing the very same design probably 50 times, right? So if you start with a full bobbin on hooping number 1, and then when it's low, you will count the number of hoopings that you did, because at that moment in time, it'll be easy to count, right? Because clearly they're identifiable. And then make a note of that. Okay, that was 8 hoopings, right? And now you'll know every 8 hoopings, you're going to need a new bobbin. And if you neglect to do that, you know, we all do, just know that every time you finish a row, a column at the bottom of the quilt, check the bobbin, okay? Because that's when you're doing your most movement, right? You're going to really remove that top frame and you're going to slide your fabric, and it's a good time to lift it and check the bobbin, because that's frustrating, right, Margaret? You're in the middle of a design.
Yes.
Yeah, we have friends that call it bobbin chicken, right? They want to see if they can get the design before it runs out. Yeah, I'd rather not play bobbin chicken. I like to get a count, how many hoopings that was, and then just be prepared. And as long as I, you know, start with 3 bobbins, I'm never going to be without one, right? I'm going to have one ready, you know, 2 ready to go. So, yeah. All right. So now we have to figure out where. Oh, yeah, the labels. All right. So let's go ahead and talk about labels. You know, you should always label your quilt, right, Margaret?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's a part of you in that quilt. And it just, yeah, my mom had some quilts and I wish I knew who they came from, but there was no label on them.
No label on them. And, you know, it's really lovely to use scraps or the same fabric from the actual quilt to make the label. And I have some samples to show you. This is an applique fabric that was included on the front side of that quilt. Of course, just black was, you know, big part of that quilt. So that worked out really well. And then I've since, more recently, I like to make a label that goes in the corner of a quilt on the wrong side, and it's captured in the binding. I can then hand close that, you know, half square triangle to the back of the quilt, but it gives you all the information. The maker, is it a name, you know, what have you. I have some others that were like for my sister Marie, her 50th, you know, that's, you know, every time I go to visit her, there it is on her couch, or, you know, maybe it's in a closet or so forth, but it brings back a fond memory of that birthday celebration that she had. And of course, the welcoming a new baby, we all love to do that, have a gift for a new baby. So make your mark and absolutely make a label. And if you do it before the end, before the binding, then, you know, that's the best time to do it. Really think it through and try to have that label ready so that it's not a hassle to add later, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, get that done, because the more we put towards the end of the project, the more likely we are to say, oh, forget it. But if you do it at the beginning and when you're preparing your materials and gathering your supplies, just do your label.
Just do your label. Yeah. So anyway. Okay, so let's talk about, this is the special. This is Snap Guides on Special, and I want to show you how you buy them. So they're on our website. There's a drop-down menu over there. You can see Snap Guide 4, and it's calling out a specific Snap Hoop Monster size. And then, oh, I know, this is a lot of choices. These are all the hoops that we make, and maybe you don't know what size Snap Hoop Monster you have. So I'm going to show you how to, you can determine that. We have a chart on our website that tells you, if you just measure the interior of your hoop, that will tell you, this chart will tell you what size your hoop is, because in this instance, this is a 6x10. We all call it a 6x10, just like you hear the term 4x4, 5x7, 8x8. Well, those hoops don't actually measure that at all. The actual physical size of a 6x10 is 7.32 by 12 inches. So that 6x10 is just the sewing field.
Right.
So we have made this great chart, and I think I have it right here. We did print it out. And what did I do with it? That's the trouble. What did I do with it? Gloria, I have this wonderful assistant who does all these things for me. Oh, here it is. It's under my pool noodles. Okay, so just so you can see, here's the chart, right? Here's our chart. And it gives you the schematic at the top so you can understand. And then so just go and measure your interior of your hoop. And when you do that, you will get either metric or inches, whatever measurement system you like to measure in. We have both here, metric and imperial. And then when you find that, then you come over and you go, oh, I have the LM7, which is the, 8x12. Even though it doesn't measure that, that's what it's called. And we didn't make up that naming system. The machine manufacturers made up that naming system. So we have it for all of our hoops: Brother, Baby Lock, Janome, Bernina, Pfaff, Viking. So all of these are here, and Janome. So this is available on our website. It's easy to find, and we hope that you'll use it. And then you'll buy the right snap guide, because it is easy to purchase the wrong one. And then that's disappointing. It doesn't work for your hoop. But boy, they're great, right?
Oh my gosh, yes, they're amazing. And like you said, way back in the beginning, there really is no other way to quilt on your home machine without using the Snap Monster hoops. And then those guides are fabulous.
They really are. So we have had so many nice visitors here today. Belgium, and here's Charlene from Ohio. So many people. And then I'm serious. Or she says, have you done matchstick design? So I've never done that in an embroidery machine. I have done it free motion, but I don't do a lot of free motion because I actually want to finish my quilts. So, right? And I like to, do big quilts. But matchstick quilting, in case you don't know, is vertical or horizontal lines very close together, running stitches that kind of appear to be a box of matchsticks. So it's really tight quilting. It's gorgeous. Very tedious to do and takes real artistry, I think. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so and also you'll see this information. So some of these snap guides are compatible with multiple hoops, because even though you're a 8x8 Baby Lock user, that 8x8 also works in a Janome and also the Viking. So don't be, turned off if you see this on the back of the snap guide that you purchased. If your machine is listed there, then it's compatible with your hoop. So I shouldn't say machine, it's actually hoop. All right. So, we're going to be doing vintage embroidery. Oh, and Margaret, you love vintage embroidery, don't you? You do lots of vintage work.
Absolutely. It has such a warm look, is what I would call it. So cozy and warm. And I just love it. Yes.
Yeah. So Ashley Jones is going to be here on Facebook Live doing her software success on March 19th at 1 o'clock. I hope you'll join her for that. You will always learn so much from Ashley, for sure. And then, we would really hope that you would like us and on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It tells us that you're getting the education that you were seeking and that we're providing the right stuff for all of you. So those metrics really mean an awful lot to you. We would appreciate if you would do that. And next week, I have another guest, and this time it's Sarah Vetterer of The Meaning of Life Designs. Do you know Sarah, Margaret?
I do. She has done webinars with me, an extremely talented lady. Oh my gosh, you all are going to love getting to meet her.
Yes, and it'll be her first time here on Facebook Live with me. So we haven't really had a lot of opportunity to work together through the years. Once she was on the cover, one of her projects was on the cover of Designs in Machine Embroidery, but that's a long time ago. I think it was 2015. So I'm really excited to reconnect with her and find out what's been going on over at The Meaning of Life Designs. I hope you'll all come back and join us for that. And I know many of you are waiting to find out what our on the house design is, and you can find those right on our website with just click on free designs and you will find our most recent on the house design. I think we have a reel to show so we can see what you've been stitching. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Wow, weren't they cute? Some of those. Ooh,
Yeah, those are adorable. Oh
they
my
really
God.
are. I know. They're so great. We love seeing what everybody's stitching. We love seeing that. Okay, so, oh, how did that happen? That's not supposed to be there. But let's see. If you want to see your project in the reel, please share your project on social media using the hashtags Dime So Long, On the House, and Exquisite Thread, and then we'll find it. And oh my, I don't know what's happening with these slides. There we have it. This free design this week is the Cool Dude Bunny, and we hope that you'll download that. Last week we had that adorable sweet girl bunny. So this week is the Cool Dude Bunny, and they are exquisite. They really are.
Cute, cute, cute.
Yeah. So Margaret, thank you so much for joining me. It was just delightful to have you here.
Well, Eileen, this was so fun, and I'm so glad I learned some new tips and techniques. You all are so good at your education and sharing all your wonderful tips with us. So thank you.
Well, you're so welcome. And I know many of these viewers would really benefit from jumping over to virtualsewingguild.net and getting a free membership and then considering upgrading to premium. There's an awful lot to learn from Margaret. So thank you again for joining me, and thank all of you for joining us today.